Hello, I'm Phil Spencer. Welcome to my series of vodcasts. In this second video, we're going to take a look at some of the downright dodgy practices that go on when buying or selling a home and how to avoid them. When it comes to buying and selling a property, people can be a fickle bunch, and it's a sad fact of life that many will use some pretty questionable tactics to make or save a few extra pounds. And according to new research from online conveyancers Indeed, these problems are only getting worse. First up, gazumping. This happens when a seller pulls out of an agreement with a buyer to accept a higher offer from someone new. This can leave the buyer thousands of pounds out of pocket. Gazumping really came about in the property boom of the 80s, and whilst it's less common now because prices are more stable, it does still take place, as Nikki found out.
We wanted to expand the family, so we were looking for a slightly bigger house with maybe a driveway, slightly bigger garden, slightly bigger house, that we would be able to stay in for the rest of the time that we were going to be living in London. Yeah. So we put the house on the market and sold quite quickly, and then found the house that we really wanted. Did the surveys, put an offer in, it was accepted, everything was going really smoothly until 2 days before we were due to exchange, when we got a call to say that somebody had offered a lot more money and could exchange within 2 days because they were cash buyers, so we obviously couldn't match what they'd offered, and we lost the house.
One of the best ways to avoid being gazumped is to move the sale along as quickly as possible. This means making sure all the legal stuff and paperwork, or conveyancing, runs smoothly. And for this to happen, you'll need a lawyer you can trust. Insist the property's taken off the market once your offer's been accepted. Check the house has a sold sign outside it, and contact the estate agent if it doesn't. Keep in regular contact with the seller's agent. Tell them when you've completed the survey and received a formal mortgage offer. If they know the sale's progressing well, they're less likely to consider interest from other buyers. Maintain a good relationship with the seller. This may sound idealistic, but if you've got a good rapport with them, he or she will find it much harder to accept a rival offer. Gazundering is the opposite of gazumping. It happens when a buyer suddenly drops their offer, having already entered into an agreement with the seller. The seller is then left to decide whether to take the reduced price or pull out and try and find another buyer. So what should you do to avoid this? Again, speed is of the essence. The longer a buyer has to wait to exchange contracts, the more chance there is they'll start to feel uncertain about their offer. So get moving. The sooner you push through the legal paperwork, the better. Set a realistic asking price. The less time it takes you to get an offer, the less desperate you'll be to sell at any price. Be upfront and honest about any defects. If the buyer's aware of problems from the start, it's far more difficult for them to turn around later and use this as a reason to haggle down the price. Be reasonable. Maybe you could make a counter-offer. Remember, there are two sides to negotiating. We've talked about gazumping and gazundering. Now here's a new one for you. Gazanging. This is something that Indeed have noticed is on the up. Basically, a seller accepts an offer but then decides to pull out and stay put, leaving behind a very unhappy buyer and a broken property chain. There are lots of reasons why gazanging has started to happen. There are far fewer houses on the market, and this means that people are finding it more difficult to find their dream homes, so much so that some sellers eventually decide to stay put. Limited access to credit means that many more people struggle to secure a mortgage, leaving them high and dry when it comes to buying their next home. And uncertainty about what's happening with house prices can also make sellers reassess their plans. Now, it's impossible to completely protect yourself from gazanging, but there are some simple steps you can take to limit the risk. Establish the nature of the chain the seller's part of. If they haven't put in an offer on another property, you're more vulnerable. Get to know the seller and keep in direct contact with them throughout the transaction. This means that they're more likely to share any concerns they have with you and therefore will find it more difficult to pull out. Speed up the legal side of conveyancing. The faster you get the various searches and the survey done, the faster the sale goes through and the less opportunity there is for the seller to pull out. So there you have it, the 3 Gs explained. Gazumping, gazundering, and now gazanging. These are some of the issues that can end up in a broken chain and result in both buyer and seller misery. If there's one thing to take away from all this, it's that speedy, efficient conveyancing limits the risk of these problems. Remember, delays are nobody's friend. For those who feel they'll need a helping hand along the way, online conveyancing services like Indeed.net can help you avoid some of the dodgier practices that go on whether you're buying or selling.